Hello and welcome to another episode of Snakes Territory, which is presented by Fox One. I'm Jesse Friedman alongside Jack Sommers. And Jack, we are back here with another off-season episode of the show. I know you were just out at the Arizona Fall League. I guess it stopped raining finally, Jack. Apparently, all it ever does is rain in Phoenix, Arizona now. So
Yeah,
maybe
it's
that's
amazing.
finally behind us.
Well, it was a beautiful day, sunshiny, a little bit of clouds, Salt River Fields. You look out from that press box, see the views in the mountains. It's a beautiful place. Got to see some baseball today, and we'll be talking a little bit about what's been going on in the Fall League later. But yeah, highly recommend to any listener that's here in Arizona, if you haven't been out to a Fall League game, get on out there. What are you waiting for? It's $12. Go see some baseball.
There you go. Yes, absolutely. One of the best kept secrets in the valley for sure. Today, Jack, our primary focus is one Ketel Marte, who, of course, was the subject of some reporting during the course of this 2025 season. There was the big report from Nick Picoro right around the halfway point of the year, where he reported that there have been some issues internally with Ketel Marte, some people who have not been so happy about the way he's gone about his business at times. And then there was a report from Bob Nightingale that came out shortly thereafter where he said that one of the worst kept secrets in baseball is that the Diamondbacks will listen to trade offers on Ketel Marte this offseason. I don't think either you or I, Jack, are entering this conversation expecting Ketel to be traded or advocating for Ketel to be traded. However, when you have a credible reporter like Bob Nightingale saying what he said toward the end of the season, it's at least a conversation worth having.
Exactly. I mean, and just to nip it in the bud, we are not trying to get Cattell traded. That's not our purpose here. We're doing our due diligence. I mean, the fact is that the possibility of him being traded is out there. That balloon was not floated by us, but we have to address it. And the only way we know how to do that is in our usual geeky way and try to figure out what is his actual trade value and what kind of return might come back. In previous episodes, I voiced the opinion that I don't think he'll be traded because I think the Diamondbacks probably came to the realization that it's going to be very difficult to find proper value for him. And I still believe that, but it wouldn't be us if we didn't dig into this a little bit deeper and just see what it actually looks like.
I think with Ketel, the place that I start with this, Jack, is that I can't imagine the Diamondbacks doing this trade unless they got a pretty good starting pitcher in return. Like that just feels to me like the slam dunk, no doubt starting. I mean, I guess there's maybe a way that this trade could work where you're getting some fairly really good position player somewhere else. Maybe it's a variety of pieces, but the only way I can see it possibly being worth it for the Diamondbacks is if you get a key piece for your starting rotation. Certainly one of the team's biggest needs going into next year.
There's two scenarios where they're trading him. One is to try to improve the team to get back to the postseason in 2026. And if that's the case, they absolutely, if they are going to trade him, the only option is go get a really good starting pitcher
Right.
plus something. Um, the other point is if they're not actually trying to use that trade to get them back to the postseason in 2026, and they're making more of a future looking trade, then that kind of opens things up a little bit of what kind of return you would look for. It would probably be as much about multiple players with multiple years of control, which would include a pitcher or two, I'm sure. But it might not require quite the established level of pitcher. So there's kind of two ways that they could go there if they're looking to trade him. We don't know if they're even looking to trade him. And if they did, is it to try to win in 26 or is it to try to build for the future?
Mm. Well, you mentioned it earlier, the question of like, what is Ketel Marte worth on the trade market? It's not exactly super easy to pinpoint this. I mean, on one hand, Ketel Marte has been a superstar level player when healthy for the past couple of years, and certainly at times before that. But he does have an injury track record for sure. There's the reporting that I referenced earlier that came out in the middle of the season. Will other teams be hesitant to trade for him because of that reporting that came out? And then there's also the question, of course, of how long will Ketel Marte play second base? If he's a DH sooner than later, then that would certainly factor in for an acquiring team.
And it does. We'll get to that in a moment when we dive into the numbers. But I think the first point at the bottom of your screen here, people see Marte inked a 6-year, $116.5 million extension. So let's dive into those numbers and see what that contract was actually about. This information comes courtesy of COTS over on Baseball Prospectus, who actually is my favorite website for digging out information on contracts because they really always seem to have the most accurate and complete information. So Ketel was signed the extension on April 2nd, 2025. And he was signed through from 25 through 30 with a 2031 player option. The salaries go 14, 15, 12, 20, 22, 22. And then the player option is for only 11.5. So very economical at the front end, 14, 15, and 12, right? So that's 41 million, and then 64 million over the balance 3 years. So over 20 million. Now, there are incentives here. If Ketel finishes in the top three of the MVP vote, he gets an additional $3 million. If he finishes fourth through seventh, he gets an additional $2 million. Then he also has plate appearance incentives, 500,000 for each of 500, 550, 750 each for 620 and 625 PAs. So I'm sorry, I messed that up reading it. 750K if he gets to 600 or 625. So in 2025, for example, Ketel earned $1 million. He earned two of those $500,000 bonuses for reaching over 550 PAs. 5 million of his 2025 salary was deferred. That money must be entered into an escrow account no later than July 1st of 2026. So I think it's important to note that, you know, if he does have a really good year, for example, in 2026, then he would tack on a significant amount of money, 3 million. And if he's winning, if he's finishing in the top three in the MVP, he's probably coming up close to 600 PA and could earn significant amount of incentive there.
Could tell, yeah. I mean, and I guess there's an incentive built in there for him to finish fourth through seventh in MVP. And I don't know if that's totally out of the question that he could do that this year. I'm probably not expecting it based on the fact he played 126 games, but the field is not great in the National League for the MVP race this year. So I don't know, Jack. Do you think it's possible that Cattell somehow sneaks in there at seventh place?
I think it would be a pretty big upset if he did. He didn't finish the season very strong. His numbers tailed off. Had his batting average been up around 290 and is up over 30 homers, he probably would have got there. But overall, he tailed off quite a bit down the stretch, and that didn't help. So it would be an upset for him to finish in the top seven.
Well, of course, regardless of what happened in 2025 or past seasons, the big question that other teams will be thinking about as they weigh a potential Ketel Marte trade, if this was really a thing, is what could you expect from Ketel in the coming years? And Jack, I know that as you always do, you put quite a bit of work into projecting out what we could maybe expect from Ketel over the life of this contract.
Well, it's a process to get to a projection. At the end of the day, they're just projections. So, we have to start somewhere. So, if you could throw up the first slide, and I'll kind of walk through that a little bit. There we go. So, this is a 4-year weighted average, and essentially, weighted average is the starting point for these projections. So it's, in this case, it's 4 years. So it's 4, 3, 2, 1. 2025 counts for 40%. 2024 is 30%, and so on. I use AWAR, which is the average of Baseball Reference and Fangraphs WAR. And using that, the 4-year weighted average production for Ketel Marte looking backwards was 4.8. So that's a starting point. It's 4.8 WAR is in 583 PA. That's our platform to build off of to go forward and then look at what Ketel might look like going forward.
And that's a pretty darn good player. I mean, we were talking before the show about how Cattell does not feel like the model of consistency or durability exactly. But I mean, that's a decent plate appearances average. I mean, it's close to 600 PAs on average over the course of that weighted average. So it's not a terrible number from that standpoint for what that's worth. I guess the flip side of this, Jack, is what we expect moving forward as I transition to this next chart. I know you put some work into these numbers as well. What were kind of your main takeaways here?
So in this case, I projected Cattell losing about 30 PA off that platform from the 4-year weighted average. So 2026 starts out at 550 PA, which essentially is about the same as 2025, and then dropping 500 plate appearances each year to 2030. Now, of course, it's not going to be linear like that in real life. He may have a 600 PA season in there and then a 300 PA. I mean, that's kind of the way things usually go. But, in total, this is about 2250 PA over the next 5 seasons. And by the time he's 36, it's all the way down to 350 PA. So you're going to see a reduction in WAR, generally for several reasons. One of the old standards is dropping by 0.5 WAR each season. But in this case, I start off with 4 WAR, and it's a little bit more than dropping just 0.5 from the weighted average the year before of 4.8, in part because of the reduced playing time, but also because I expect as the seasons go on for this playing time to be weighted ever more heavily towards DH. And when you're the designated hitter, each designated hitter plate appearance is negative positional value. So one of the key components of wins above replacement is positional value. And Ketel Marte, for example, in 2024 played, 2023 played almost all of his games at second base and was well over 600 plate appearances, and he had 5 Baseball Reference positional runs. But when you end up DHing a significant amount of time, maybe 10 or 20% or more, then your positional runs are going to drop to 2. So he's losing not only the standard half a WAR per year, but he's also losing an additional 0.3 WAR per year on top of that because he's going to be DHing ever more. So that dropped all the way by the time he's age 36 down to 1 WAR in 350 plate appearances, which may seem a little bit harsh, but that's what aging curves look like. Now, the better the player, generally, the better chance they'll beat the aging curve. Okay, so that may be a flip side of this or counter argument for saying that projection is a little bit too pessimistic. But it comes out to 12.6 WAR over the next 5 years, with the last couple of years not very much. That brings us to a value calculator. But before we get to the value calculator, Jesse, what do you think about that projection?
It definitely feels underwhelming at first glance. I mean, Cattell over the past 3 seasons, I'm looking at his numbers on Baseball Reference. He's at 16 WAR over the past 3 years on Baseball Reference, and then over at Fangraphs, I think the number is in a pretty similar spot, 15.3. So, I mean, that's more than 5 WAR per year the past 3 seasons that Cattell has averaged, and we're here talking about. I think this is a total of 12.6. over the course of 2026 to 2030. I mean, that's 5 years where he would produce less WAR than he has the past 3 seasons. But I mean, I understand where your numbers come from. I think they're very legitimate. They're probably more legitimate than what most people have in their heads. Aging curves are what they are for a reason. This stuff is not just made up. I do think it's worth noting with Ketel that he has not followed the aging curve really at all to this point. He's gotten better. I mean, last year, his age 30 season was his best year ever. And this year, he was pretty darn good as well. This year, you could argue, is his second best season since 2019. And this was his age 31 season. Like, it is not normal for a player to perform at this level at this age. And if you look at some of the underlying stuff like his xWOBA, he actually had the highest xWOBA of his career in 2025 at 400. So the batted ball quality is really good. His bat speed, I believe, has only trended upwards, which is not normal for a player as they age into their early 30s. So I think there are some valid reasons, Jack, to wonder if Ketel could outperform the numbers that you just gave. But I can't. I mean, I definitely cannot dismiss them because I mean they're based on what we've seen in the past, and what we see in the past and time again in baseball is that as you get further and further into your 30s, you do regress, and it doesn't always happen in a linear way, as you mentioned earlier.
And again, we're using WAR. So base running counts too. And Ketel, the bottom's fallen out of his sprint speed.
Yeah,
He's
true.
slow now. His running speed is below average. Now, when he's feeling completely healthy and he's not holding himself back, he can suddenly look faster, but he's not completely healthy very often. And he's holding himself back, or the team's holding him back and telling him not to run too hard. But the net result is his average sprint speed. The bottom dropped out this year. He was like the fourth or fifth slowest guy in the team. So his base running value is going to drop. His defensive value is going to drop. We're talking about WAR, right? He went from what, plus 10 fielding runs in 2024 to like 2 or something in
Still
2025.
graded out above average, but yeah, it's not
Yeah.
his defense has regressed and is a pretty big wild card moving forward. I think it's
So
fair to say that.
I think you can say that very fairly say that his defense and base running, which are components of WAR, are going to continue to regress. I'm very confident in that, even if his bat does not. Even if his bat stays at this level, the other components of WAR, base running, defense, positional value, are all going down. So if we're going to use WAR, then we have to take that into account.
Well, we will pretty soon here get on to what the full projections for the next 5 years look like, how that compares to what they have over at Fangraphs, and then ultimately what that means for a Ketel Marte trade, what they could maybe hope to get back for him. We'll stay on this topic on the other side of this break. October baseball is here, and with DraftKings Sportsbook, you're right there in the middle of every moonshot moment. New customers bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get paid out $300 in bonus bets instantly. If I were looking to place a bet on some NLCS baseball, DraftKings Sportsbook would be my go-to. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code FOUL. That's code FOUL to turn $5 into $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins. In partnership with DraftKings, the crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, pass-through of per-wager tax may apply in Illinois. 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Restrictions apply. Bet must win to receive bonus bets which expire in 7 days. Minimum odds required. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. Limited time offer.
Well, here we are back on Snakes territory, which is presented by Fox One. Jack, here's the whole shebang. Your projections for Ketel here over the next 5 seasons. We can see the total amount of money he'll make, that 12.6 total WAR that I mentioned earlier, And then I guess that number in the bottom right corner that you see is his surplus value coming out at $20.9 million. That would basically mean that Ketel will be worth $20.9 million more than what he will be paid over the life of this contract.
Right. So the value column, which is the second from the bottom column, that's set to $9 million per WAR. That's actually higher than what Fangraphs shows on their value section. There's a lot of debate about how much is one WAR worth, or is one WAR for a position player the same as it is for a pitcher. Um, Fangraphs uses one number and they use 8. I'm using 9. So what's notable here is in 2026 and 2027, even with the somewhat slightly repressed WAR projection, Ketel's generating significant positive value. For WAR, 9 million is 36 million value, and he's going to get paid 16 million. So that's a $20 million surplus. In 2027, the surplus is 17.2 million. He's only making 12.5 million in 27. The problem becomes in 28, 29, and 30. In 2028, he's barely above water, barely breaking even at 2.5 million surplus value. That's due to a 2.5 WAR projection, which is worth 22.5 million against a $20 million salary. And then as his WAR projection continues to go down, while his salary gets more expensive, for his age 35 and 36 seasons, he makes 22 million each year. But I have him projected at 1.8 and 1 WAR respectively, which is worth 16 and 9 million. That comes out to negative value, negative 5.8 in 29, negative 13 in 2030. So the bottom line is Ketel Marte will probably easily be worth well more than his contract over the next couple of years, but over the final 2 or 3, he'll probably be in the red. The total projection I have here is a surplus value of about $21 million.
It's hard for me to look at this, Jack, and not think back to the conversation we've had previously, which is why did they sign him to this extension again? Did they, did they actually need to guarantee Ketel money in 2029 and 2030 in his age 35 and age 36 seasons? There's a player option for 2031 as well, which, I mean, you figure he's going to pick up that player option in a scenario where he's not maybe playing up to that standard. So, yeah, I still have questions along those lines. I think they're valid, and I wonder if, as a team looking to trade for Ketel Marte, if you might like it a whole lot more, like the idea of it a whole lot more, if the contract just went through 2028 and you felt really good about what you were going to get these next few years.
The other point is it's now or never,
Yeah,
right? If you don't trade for him now and get likely the next couple of years of positive value, why would you trade for him?
yeah,
Right. I mean, second basemen also pretty well known to fall off a cliff by their mid 30s. So what team is going to want to trade for him after, even if he has another really good season in 2026? Then now you're down one of the valuable seasons.
yeah.
So if they're going to move him, if another team is going to be aggressive in trying to pursue him, I should say, then that's going to be now. Because once 2026 is off the boards, it's mostly the higher end dollars for the decline years. And teams are going to be a lot less interested in that. So that's kind of why we're doing this due diligence. I mean, I don't think he's going to be traded, but if he is, it's going to happen now. Because if they don't trade him now, they're probably stuck with him throughout his decline years.
The other point that I'll add to that is his service time. He entered the year at well over 8 years of service, meaning he is set to reach 10 years of service time in 2026. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jack. That means that Ketel is going to have no trade rights pretty soon. because
Does
of the
he
10-5 clause, right?
does he reach 10 full years of service in 26 or 27?
In 26. Yeah, he entered this year with 8
Yeah.
years and I mean, well over 8 years of service. So he's going to end this year. He ended 2025 with well over 9 years. So next year
That's
he'll
right.
hit 10. So that would be another reason that if the Diamondbacks are looking to move Ketel Marte or at least interested in entertaining the idea at any point, this is really when you have to make the move. Like if you don't make that move this offseason, there's a pretty good chance it's just not really going to line up for the rest of that contract. Not impossible. I mean, who knows? But you certainly wouldn't feel great about it after this offseason when he's still a pretty attractive asset. And I
You
know
know,
we have yeah, go ahead.
as you're talking, I don't know if it was in his article or a conversation I had with him, with Bob directly, but the 10-5 rights issue came up. So he absolutely is reaching 10-5 in 26.
So that's just another layer to this where if you're the D-backs and you're interested in at least what you could get for Ketel Marte, you probably want to push those chips in this offseason. So we looked at your projections, Jack. I know Fangraphs, they do a thing where they rank the top contracts in baseball, the most valuable players in baseball every year. And Ketel came in at number 31. They have him projected for 14.2 WAR over the next 5 years compared to your 12.6. So maybe a little bit more than what you had, but pretty much in the same range.
Yeah, I don't think that they're probably knocking down his playing time quite as much as I did. And I don't think that they're bucketing as much of his playing time into DH as I did. Those
Yeah.
would be because I didn't actually decrease the performance per PA as far as hitting and all of that was concerned. So yeah, they're at 14.2. I'm at 12.6, 1.6 WAR. So we're talking, $14 million difference there, right? So that's not insignificant by any means. I would look at this then as a range, where I'm projecting 12 and a half, 12.6. They've got 14.2. That's probably a pretty reasonable range. Like anyone thinking that 5 years of Cattell is going to be another 5 straight years of 4 or 5 WAR, they're just way overestimating what he might actually do.
It's not impossible. I mean, like, I'm not gonna
Sure,
say I'd
nothing's
be
impossible.
totally floored if Cattell was a 5 WAR player for 2, 3 more seasons. I think it's possible, but yeah, I mean, it can't be the baseline expectation based on what all these numbers are telling us. So I guess this brings us around to the big question, Jack, of what would you want and what other teams might be interested. These are not questions that we can really answer with any degree of confidence, but we can at least throw out a few names, some ideas. As I said earlier, Jack, I think you got to get a pretty good starting pitcher. It would be really hard, I think, for Mike Hazen to sell this to the fan base unless he brought back a true frontline starting pitcher with multiple years of control. I'm not saying another team is necessarily going to want to do that, but I think it's kind of what you'd have to get. And there aren't all that many guys out there like that would feel gettable in any sense. I naturally think of the Seattle Mariners because I always have to think of the Mariners when we're talking about a Diamondbacks trade. The Mariners do have several starting pitchers who are attractive, like Brian Wu for 3 seasons. He has 3 more years of control. Check that. I think he has 4 more seasons of control. He's through 2029. He had a
Mhm.
really good season this year, 2.94 ERA in almost 200 innings, basically never walks anybody. Logan Gilbert, also attractive, but only 2 years of control there. And then George Kirby, the other Mariners starter who's interesting, did not have a particularly good year this season, but that's 3 years of control of at least a good starting pitcher, still really good peripherals there. I think all three of those names are at least like, okay, that could maybe be a conversation that you'd be willing to have. There aren't that many other names around the game, Jack. I mean, I think of Hunter Brown with the Houston Astros. They seem to have sort of a hole at second base, given Jose Altuve's decline, the fact that they played him a bunch in left field this past year. The Mariners, I should mention, they do have a hole at second base theoretically. Jorge Polanco has had an awesome year, but he has a mutual option for next year that you never expect that to get picked up. So those are a couple teams that come to mind for me, Jack. But yeah, I'm just kind of throwing things out here.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be a team with playoff aspirations that's in win now mode that has excess pitching.
Right.
Good luck. Good luck finding a match. I don't know. Guardians want to give up a pitcher. Hey, Slade and Ciccone might be available.
Now that would be tough to sell to the fan base. I don't think anybody's feeling too good about that. I know Slade had his moments this past year. I don't know. Joe Ryan of the Minnesota Twins is a name that has come up. He has 2 more years of control, 2026, 2027. Not a truly elite pitcher necessarily, but he had a 3.42 ERA this year in 31 games, 30 starts. He's a pretty solid pitcher, going to be one of the more highly sought after names out there. So yeah, I mean the Twins certainly feel like a team that could use offense. And I don't know, but it's tough. I mean, to your point, like you have to find a team that is willing to take the risk that comes with getting a Ketel Marte, but really needs offense badly and has pitching that they're willing to deal to get it. And frankly, we just don't see many trades where teams get rid of pitchers that have multiple years of control and are also really good, which is what the Diamondbacks need.
Not only that, but I mean, like you talk about the Twins. I mean, they just ripped apart their team.
Yeah.
So what do they need Ketel for? And oh, by the way, they got a 22-year-old second baseman, Luke Keeschall, that just hit 302 with a 128 OPS plus over the final 2 months of the year.
Yeah, the Twins' dream is dead, pretty much. I think we can we just about put them off the table.
Yeah. So I think that as we said at the outset, and as I've said repeatedly, it really depends on what they're trying to accomplish, right? If they're trying to win in 2026, their best bet is just to hold on to Ketel because they're unlikely to get the kind of pitching that's going to be enough of an offset. Off air, Jesse, you made a pretty interesting point to me about marginal value. And I think that is something that you should bring up here because there is a difference there as far as the Diamondbacks' own needs.
Yeah, I mean, I just think we should note that a really good starting pitcher, I think, has more value to the Diamondbacks than a really good second baseman. Not to say that from a position player standpoint, they're set and they'd have somebody ready to go and step in at second base, but second base is just an easier thing to find. It's easier to get 1 or 2 WAR out of second base just by stringing something together than it is to get 1 or 2 WAR out of a spot in your rotation. I mean, theoretically, you're going from, if you were to go out and get a frontline starter right now, the marginal value is huge because you're replacing, Christian Mena or whoever, whatever a minor league starter who would have to be in a rotation spot right now if the season started tomorrow. You're replacing that player with a whoever the player is, a Brian Wu, if the D-backs could somehow pull that off. That's a massive, massive value gain. Even if Brian Wu isn't expected to produce 4 or 5 WAR next season, which he isn't, I mean, there's a real chance Ketel still outperforms whatever pitcher you might want next season. But I think there's a lot of value in upgrading a rotation spot, especially if you can get a frontline guy.
Yeah, I think the simplest way to summarize what you just said is a 3 WAR starter is probably worth more to the Diamondbacks than a 4 WAR second baseman. Is that what you're trying to say?
That is very well said.
Or,
Yes.
or at least as much.
At least as much, like worth a conversation, I think at the very least. And all those names that I mentioned, I mean, I'd be surprised if the D-backs traded Ketel in a 1-for-1 deal. Like I'm not saying you trade Ketel for one of those guys straight up. There's probably more to the trade depending on who it is. It'd be great if you could find a way to backfill the second base spot in the trade as well, if somehow that was doable. But it's going to be really hard, Jack. I mean, trying to piece something like this together, it's it's really difficult to see the pieces coming together unless the team is just in a place where they're like, you know what, based on what we've observed the past few years, we just need to move on from this guy and we'll take the highest offer. And if they do that, there's a pretty good chance that they wind up not getting good value in return. That trading Ketel Marte will make this team worse than what we have right now.
Yeah, as you're talking, I'm just sitting here thinking, had he not suffered the hamstring injury and had the hiccup in July, August not happened, I mean, he's probably going to go ahead and put up a 6 or 7 more season. And, either we're not having this conversation at all, or we're having a conversation about the monster return we could be getting for him. Because I don't think the 2024 injury would be held against him because he got rolled by a reckless sliding catcher for the Phillies, backup catcher who had. I'm sorry. Calm down, Jack. Anyway, but I mean that injury, that ankle injury, was not a soft tissue injury. It was a baseball injury, not a recurring soft tissue injury. Whereas a hamstring issue, groin issues, some soreness with the back. I mean, all of these things impacted the amount of games he was able to play, and teams are fully aware of that. So had he gotten through this past year without those soft tissue injuries, and had he not had that downturn because of all the emotional upsetness that happened mid-season, then we're talking about a completely different set of scenarios.
Maybe we're talking about the Diamondbacks playing in the NLCS right now. Who knows? Probably not. But you never know. You never know how these things could work out. Of course, all of this conversation about starting pitching, there's no secret the Diamondbacks are very much lacking in starting pitching depth going into 2026. Jack, I know you wrote about that recently. We're going to dive into all of the various options that they have, all of the starting pitcher depth pieces that they do have in the organization. Take a look at what options they do have, and talk about what they might really need to get this offseason in light of that. So we'll talk about that on the other side of this break.
Let's hit this week's Arena Club slab pack pull. We opened a Ruby. We went big.
We did.
$250 pack.
That was, what? The nerves got me. I think it was so exciting because the motion, it waits about 4 or 5 seconds for the card to come up. Card that I got was over $300, a prospect from the Mariners. And for me, I love the card. I thought it was great. And guess what? I sold it back.
Yep.
And now I got a little more money, and now I can go buy another one. You have to wait a couple minutes afterwards. And this is the excitement of the whole thing. Put your money where your mouth is and have fun with Arena Club.
You can see that big smile on Todd Father's face. Lazaro Montes, who's supposed to be good. He's Baseball America top 3. He's in the Mariners organization. But Todd Father sometimes thinks prospects are suspects.
Sometimes.
So he's going back to the well, and we'll see what he gets next time. Use the code FOUL, FOUL, at arenaclub.com/foul if you want to get in on the first slab pack experience and get 20% off, or 20% off your first card purchase.
Well, Jack, it's no secret if the Diamondbacks were to not acquire any starting pitchers over the course of this offseason, they would be in a bit of a precarious spot going into 2026. I know you wrote about this topic recently, the starting pitching depth options that they have, or frankly, lack thereof. What stood out to you as you were looking into this?
Well, the first thing I want to say is we've known for a while, of course, that the Diamondbacks were going to need 2 starting pitchers. And I'm sure that they're either going to sign or trade for, one pretty solid option. That's clear. Whether or not they'll be able to go for 2 solid options, plus they have to backfill the bullpen, plus they need either a DH or a first baseman, plus they need a right-handed hitting outfielder, plus they need a backup catcher. And so I've been asking all along, okay, how many of these slots can be filled by internal players? Right? They have 7 or 8 spots, roster spots that they need to fill, important roster spots. 2 rotation spots, 2 high leverage relievers, a backup catcher, a left fielder, and they really need a first baseman, at least somebody that can platoon with Pavin Smith. And if you're putting Pavin Smith at first base, then you need a DH.
Yeah, right.
So there's a lot of holes to fill. And the question has been for me all along is what, if any, of those holes can be filled internally? So the impetus behind the article that I wrote was, okay, I'm not thinking about the fourth starter, right? I'm just assuming that the fourth starter, they're going to go out and find somebody via trade or free agency. But could they possibly fill the fifth starter role internally? If they're unable, maybe they only have 25 to 35 million to spend in free agency or absorb salaries. Maybe it's as high as 40. We know they're cutting payroll. So between that and trade capital, it was worth looking at. But what I found is something that we all pretty much already knew, but I reconfirmed it. So this chart on the screen right now for our listeners on audio shows 7 starting pitchers who pitched in Reno. Now, why just Reno? Because the Diamondbacks, to my memory, is under the Mike Hazen era, they don't promote a starting pitcher from AA directly to MLB almost ever. Very, very rarely would you see that to start the season. It might happen out of necessity, mid-season because of injuries or whatever. But if you're talking about a spring training competition and shooting for a fifth rotation spot, they're not going to pull anybody out of AA.
No.
Any of these guys had to have at least pitched part of the season in AAA. So this list of 7 pitchers, and I drew a line under the top 4. It leads off with Christian Mena, then it goes to Cole Drake, who was acquired from Texas in the Merrill Kelly trade. Then it goes to Spencer Geesting, and then it goes to Dylan Ray. Under that line of 4 guys are Yumin Lin, Billy Corcoran, and Roman Angelo. Now, I used the metrics ERA minus and FIP minus because ERA and FIP are just so distorted without any contextual adjustments for ballpark and for league average. I mean, the average ERA and the average runs per game in the PCL is like over 6. And the Reno Aces play their home games in one of the most hitter-friendly parks in a crazy league.
Yeah.
So we use these ERA minus and FIP numbers because if you just look at the ERA, you're just going to shut off your computer. You're not going to want to watch or your phone. You're not going to even want to look at the rest of this on video. So when you look at Christian Mena in his 44 innings, he put up an 82 ERA minus and an 80 FIP minus. That means he was about roughly 20% better than league average in both his ERA, pure run prevention, and his FIP, fielding independent pitching. FIP is really important, especially for these minor leaguers playing in front of crappy defenses, or generally subpar defenses, right? So how many guys is he striking out? How many is he walking? How many balls is he letting go over the wall? Which really in Reno is another factor that we need to consider. So Christian Mena clearly is at the top of this depth chart. He pitched well in 6 2/3. I think he only gave up one run in 6 2/3. Unfortunately, he got hurt, gripping the ball a little too tightly, altered his delivery, and ended up with a strained shoulder that kept him out for the rest of the year. But he's going to be ready in spring training. So Christian Mena is at the top of that list, and he's certainly a viable option. But it's going to be really risky for the Diamondbacks to go into the season and say Christian Mena is your 5th starter.
Yeah.
Because then who's your 6, 7, and 8? Well, you have Cole Drake, who's very promising. He's a big lefty with even a bigger fastball. And he put up pretty darn good numbers in AA and decent numbers for the Rangers in the PCL and AAA. But he put up over a 9 ERA for the D-backs in 4 starts. But one thing to note about Cole Drake is I think it's a 127 ERA minus, which is bad. That's like 27% worse than league average. But his FIP minus was 93. In other words, he pitched better than his ERA. The
Yeah.
underlying peripherals are pretty good. And then after that, you have Giesting, who had pretty rough go of it in AAA until a nice 4 or 5 start run to end the season. He ended the season on a hot streak. He's a lefty with a curveball. It's not really a stuff guy. And then you have Dylan Ray, who kind of up and down season. He had some good spurts and some really good games, but he's extremely homer prone. I think he gave up 18 homers in 90 innings in AAA. So after that, I mean, that's it. That's your depth. If you can go back to the chart real quick for our listeners. Okay, so you can see Giesting, a 110 ERA minus, 110 FIP minus. That's 10% worse than league average. Dylan Ray, 107, 114. Again, worse than league average. Then you go to Yumin Lin, who went into the season as the number one rated pitching prospect, but his troubles with command and control just torpedoed his season. Again, he kind of ended a little bit better, but in 101 innings pitched, a 113 ERA minus, 117 FIP minus. That's significantly worse than average. Billy Corcoran and Roman Angelo are guys that pitched very limited innings in AAA, but they did well in AA, and they're only on this list because they're guys that pitched in AAA this year. But if either one of them is doing anything other than long relief mid-season or later, then something went very wrong with the Diamondbacks. So unfortunately, it's not a very impressive list.
Yeah, I mean, I think the ERA minus and FIP minus, I mean, those just provide such valuable perspective. The reality from those numbers, Jack, is that Christian Mena is the only member of the Diamondbacks AAA starting pitching staff who was good, who was better than league average in AAA. We're not talking about better than average in the majors. We're talking about better than average in AAA, which of course is, I mean, you'd certainly want to clear that bar before you ask a guy to come up to the majors and be a fixture in your rotation. And certainly we've seen the past few years, you're not going to make it through a season with just 5 starting pitchers. Even if the D-backs do go out and get not 1 but 2 starting pitchers this offseason, you're still going to need these guys to contribute. I mean, you're probably going to need 3 or 4, maybe more of these guys to start games for you in 2026. And for me, Jack, it just underscores, like, I don't think getting 1 starting pitcher this offseason is going to be enough. I think you have to fill those 2 spots that are being left by Merrill Kelly and Zach Gallen in order to just feel like you can be competitive and have some shot at weathering the storm when inevitably injuries injuries happen over the course of the season.
You're absolutely right, Jesse. And I mean, the work that I did here really pretty much drove home your point. I was kind of hopeful that I might find something more encouraging when I entered into it, but it is what it is.
I guess the other part of this is just thinking about the Diamondbacks farm system in a larger sense here, Jack. There was a report that came out from Baseball America where they looked at the stuff metrics across each organization, and the Diamondbacks did not do particularly well here. You made this handy chart where we can see their stuff plus across these various pitches, and overall, Diamondbacks pitchers in the minors ranked dead last in stuff plus at 96.3, with 100, of course, being average. And you go pitch by pitch here, Jack, and they're in the bottom 5, if not dead last, at every single pitch except for off-speed pitches. I guess they've got they're holding their own with changeups and splitters, but sweepers, curveballs, sliders, and both four-seam fastballs and sinkers, the stuff metrics are lacking in the organization right now. And frankly, I think that kind of tracks. I mean, that feels right given where this organization has been the past number of years. They generally don't have guys coming up from AAA and throwing super hard or, throwing these pitches that are super nasty It just hasn't been a strength of this organization for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to know, what is Stuff Plus for those that don't know. I mean, it's talking about not only velocity, but it's also measuring movement and things like induced vertical break, where your release point is, extension, all of that. In other words, it's measuring pitch quality. Now, Stuff Plus doesn't perfectly correlate to results by any means,
Right.
but it does kind of account for about 25% of the strikeout rate. And of course, strikeout rate's such a key component of fielding independent pitching, FIP, and so forth, and xERA. So it's important. It's a data point. It's not the be all end all, but in this case, the data point is so resoundingly bad to be at the very bottom of the list, and it's across everything but off-speed pitches, which is 95% changeups and 5% splitters. I mean,
And
it's really discouraging.
I'll just add real quick, sorry to cut you off, that changeups are weird with Stuff Plus. Like the stuff
Yeah,
an average changeup in Stuff Plus is not 100. I've never really viewed Stuff Plus as a
yeah,
great way to evaluate off-speed pitches anyway. So that doesn't exactly help the situation here.
yeah. Well, for sure. If you break it down pitch by pitch, the stuff, and also the Stuff Plus, this isn't including location.
Right.
Right? Because on Fangraphs, they also have Pitching Plus, which is Stuff Plus with Location Plus mixed in. So, for example, the Diamondbacks sweeper number is 117, but that's near the bottom of the pile. I think it's 27th, or I forget what it is. If you want to pull that up real quick again.
Yeah,
When you're
sweepers, they're 30th.
30th. I mean, everything that counts, four seamers 30th, sinkers 26, sliders 29, sweepers 30th, curveballs 30th. It's very damning, quite frankly. I mean, look, this is where we get to the tough part of the conversation, which is I went through and I said, you know what? I just did this messing around. I downloaded off of Baseball Reference the since 2021 all Diamondbacks pitchers, and then just deleted everybody that wasn't brought in through this organization, wasn't drafted or signed originally, and brought up through the minor leagues. If they brought a guy over once his development was completed, I didn't count that guy. And the bottom line is since 2021, they've only generated 12 Baseball Reference WAR, and 6 of it comes from Ryan Nelson. At every turn, they seem to be making the wrong choices and the wrong decisions with how they're acquiring and developing pitching. There's Zach Gallen is like a huge success story. Merrill Kelly was a huge success story. Those happened a while ago. Where's the pitcher development? Where's the player development? Why do we keep seeing former Diamondbacks performing well in the postseason? I mean, Chad Patrick, Tyler Holton, even Slade Ciccone had a pretty good outing for Cleveland till it wasn't. But I mean, this has got to change. And when you look at the results, look, here we are. It's 2026, and they don't have a guy that's able to step into the rotation. By the way, if anyone's wondering, Gilbert Diaz is not on any of those lists because he got put on a development list and then demoted to Double-A to work out of the bullpen. So he's not even a starter anymore. So that's why Gilbert Diaz isn't there. I mean, this organization, I don't know if they agree. I don't know if they see it, but they need to tear down their entire methodology for evaluating and developing pitching and start over. I'm not calling people to be fired. I'm just saying people that are there have to tear down what they're doing and figure it out and start over. Look, I'm not sitting here telling them how to do that. That's what they're paid for. But the results are just too obvious in all ways. Whether you just look at the results in terms of how much WAR is generated, wins and losses, and ERA, or if you look at Stuff Plus and the underlying metrics, you look at who's getting promoted, who's close, who's not. It's pretty damning. They have a lot of work to do. And the first thing of correcting a problem is recognizing you have a problem. And I'm not convinced that they recognize they have a problem here.
Mm. Well, that is all very well said, Jack. We are just about out of time on this episode here as we coast to the 55-minute mark. We appreciate all of you sticking with us. I think we're gonna push the Arizona Fall League update, Jack. I think we're gonna make that part of our next show, which we expect will be coming out on Thursday evening or Friday morning. Again, we're down to 2 episodes per week here as we're in off-season mode, but we very much appreciate all of you being here with us. Of course, we would love it if you would drop a like on this video, subscribe to our channel here on YouTube, leave us a comment, let us know what you think of everything we talked about on this episode. Do you think the D-backs should trade Ketel Marte, or is it just not really worth considering at all? You can find us on social media. I am at Jesse and Friedman on Twitter. Jack is at ShoeWizard59. And our show is at Snakes Territory. Jack does a great job covering the Diamondbacks, writing all sorts of great off-season stuff over at si.com/MLB/Diamondbacks. So be sure to check that out as well. Jack, any final words here as we say goodbye?
I'm sorry I was so wordy and dragged everybody down into this morass of pitching development. It took me a while.
Well, I mean, if people are hearing it, apparently they enjoyed it. They stuck with us throughout the whole thing. So we appreciate all of you for being here with us. And once again, we expect our next show to be out here in a couple of days. Probably record that on Thursday evening, get that out on Thursday night or Friday morning. So yes, we look forward to seeing all of you then. But thank you again for being with us on this episode. We really appreciate it. And yes, we will be back with another episode of Snakes Territory very, very soon.